Okay, guys, first thing we're going to work on is order of operations. Okay, remember that it's parentheses, exponent, multiplying or dividing from left to right, so whichever comes first, then adding, subtracting left to right. All right, so here, our first step is going to be, let me see here, there's no parentheses. Now, I know there's a parentheses here, but nothing's happening inside of the parentheses. So this is considered just multiplication. There's no exponents, so we're going to multiplication or division from left to right. So the first thing I run into is a division. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So now I'm left with 16 minus 4 times 2 plus 14. Now the next thing I'm going to do, let me keep on looking, and now there's a multiplication. So this is going to be 16 minus 8 plus 14. Now we do adding, subtracting from left to right. So we're going to be doing this. And we're going to be left with 8 plus 14. Then we're going to be left with 22. And we're done. Order of operations. Okay. Here is another example of order of operations. Right before, they want you to do substitution. So they want you to substitute these first. So that's what we're going to do first. Okay, let's give ourselves some space so we can work. All right. So x becomes 4. So this is going to be 3 and 4 to the second power. Then we have plus the 2. The y becomes 5. So I'm going to put a 5 there. If you haven't noticed, I put a parentheses around every number I'm substituting. Makes it clear. Z is 3. Now this one, nothing's really happening to it. Nothing's multiplying with it, so I'll make sure. Because if I would have left this just 2 and then a 5, it would have looked like 25. I could have easily gotten confused. So make sure if you have a number next to it that you're putting in a parentheses so that it knows that's multiplying. So now we do the parentheses, and we see here, inside the parentheses, there are two things happening. Exponent happens first, so we're going to do this first. We're going to be left with 9 plus, okay, 2, 5, and then 3, 4. All right, then we're still in the parentheses. Now we have to multiply, so this becomes 10. So now we're left with 3, 4 squared plus 10 plus 9. Okay, because we did this. Now we're going to do this parentheses here, 10 plus 9. So again, over here, we are left with 3, 4 squared plus 19. Now that everything's done inside the parentheses and nothing's multiplying with it, I get to just, the parentheses vanishes. So now we're dealing with the 4 squared because that's an exponent. We have to do that first. We did everything in the parentheses, so now we're dealing with exponents. That's going to be 4 times itself, so 3, that becomes 16, and that's a 19. See how the parentheses didn't vanish yet? Because the 16 is multiplying with a 3. 3 times 16, that's 30 plus 18, so that's going to be 48 plus 19. So that's going to be 58, 67. 67. Okay? All right, so that one's done. That's the PEMDAS in order of operation section. So, substitution. Okay, substitution is something like this. When you change something like 4 plus 2 into a 6. Okay? Identity property, similar, but not exactly. The additive identity means you're adding or subtracting, but you end up with one of the numbers from previous. So let's say I go, so additive inverse would be 4 plus 0 equals 4. You see how the 4 kept its identity after this? That's called the additive identity. But even if you subtract 4 minus 0, you still get 4. This is still considered an additive identity. Now let's go to the multiplicative identity. Multiplicative identity means 4 times 1 equals 4. You see how it kept its identity? Okay, hopefully you can. It kept its identity. Okay, so when something's happening and it keeps its identity, then you know it's an identity. The inverse, so for additive inverse, it's the opposite. So negative 3 plus 3 is going to make 0. When you add the opposites together, you're going to get 0. Just like if I wrote 7 minus 7. That's a positive 7 and a negative 7. When you add them together, you're going to get 0. Okay? So the inverse is when you add the opposites of each other. Multiplicative inverse is when you multiply by its inverse, meaning you are multiplying by its flipped version. In this case, here it's the opposite side of the number line. Inverse means it's flipped. So 7 times 1/7 equals 1. See? So in reality, 7 actually has a 1 underneath it. So when you flip it, it becomes 1/7. So 1/4 times 4 equals 1. That's a multiplicative inverse. Multiplicative property of 0 is pretty simple. Any number times 0 will equal 0. So let's see using these in this example down here, okay? So you should be able to see the whole thing. So I already did all the work. This was given to you, and then they did something. What they did was they combined the 15 and the 3, and they got 5. Okay, so they changed 15 divided by 3 into 5. That is called substitution. So I'm going to write substitution right here. Then I have here 5 minus 5 occurs and changes into 0. This is called the additive inverse. So I'm going to write add and inverse. Okay, that's how you got here. You don't tell me what you're going to do next. You tell me how you got here. So how did you get here? Oh, well, this happened right here. This is called the multiplicative inverse. Okay, 7 and 1/7. And then here, from here to the next step, 6 times 0 happened. That's the multiplicative property of 0. Okay? And then here, 1 plus 0 ended up to be 1. That's the additive identity. I don't know why I was spelling out that. Okay? That's what's happening there. Okay, commutative property. Commutative property is when the numbers commute. Okay? So meaning that something like 3 plus 5 plus 2 turns into 5 plus 3 plus 2. Okay? I moved the numbers around, but they still equal the same thing. I commuted them. Okay? They moved around. Now, associative property means that the numbers associate with others. None of the numbers move. None of the numbers move. They just associate themselves with different people. So 3 plus 5 are associated together. And in this other one, 5 plus 2 are associated together. So that's the associative property. You make a number associate itself with a different number. Okay, it's grouped differently. All right, last little thing. Distributive property. When a 7 is next to a parentheses, it multiplies with everything inside of the parentheses. Now you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm going to combine this first. These cannot combine because they do not have the same variable. So we're simply going to multiply the 7 with each number that's in there. So 7 times 3, that makes 21 W's. And 7 times the 5 makes 35. And that's done. What if I asked you to rewrite this? Reverse the process. Make me something that was a distributive property. What could have created this? What number divides perfectly into this that I created 7x plus 49? 7. So 7 is on the outside. 7 times something makes 7x. That's x. And 7 times something makes 49. That's a 7. And there you go. I reversed it. I factored it. Next, combine like terms. When they have the same variable like this, okay, in the beginning they didn't, but if they have the same variable, you can combine them. So 8 umbrellas plus 14 umbrellas gives me 22 umbrellas. And that's it.